Hey, welcome back, everyone. Some interesting stuff to go into today. I want to give a brief update on where the elections are at. I'll go more into that tomorrow because, hey, they're still counting ballots. Counting. Count until you win. I think that's a new way of doing it. Trump has a special announcement tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be a big day in a few regards. I'm also releasing my new documentary tomorrow. It's called The Final War. I'll show you a trailer a bit further into the episode. My new documentary comes out tomorrow, folks. It's The Final War, about the Chinese Communist Party's 100-year plan to defeat the United States. A lot of really, I think, crucial information to know in that documentary. I'll give you more information in a bit. That said, folks, also, I want to talk about something big happening right now that you might have seen people chatting about it on Twitter and stuff if you're on it, but I wanted to collect kind of the source material and show you everything. This relates to the FTX scandal. And FTX was basically one of the big cryptocurrency companies. They apparently were basically using people's money in a very, very aggressive way to invest and so on. And it looks like they were giving money to you. Basically, they were getting money from Ukraine, and then they were giving money to the Democrat Party. So money going to Ukraine from the U.S. government, from taxpayers, money going to Ukraine, then money going to FTX, and then FTX funneling money to the Democrat Party. And people are calling this out as basically a type of money laundering. The company is imploded. It's looking very bad for it. Details are coming out. I'm going to show you like the White House visitor logs that show meetings with some of these individuals. It's a big story and probably a lot bigger than most people have actually been following. I'll show you today. That said, folks, after about 25 minutes, we will jump exclusively over to Epic TV, so stay tuned for that. That said, let's get started, folks. I want to talk about Trump's special announcement. Former President Donald Trump may become President Donald Trump yet again, and tomorrow he's expected to make an announcement of his 2024 run. This is pretty significant, and it really comes amidst, frankly, I think, a desperate time for his party, where they're having an identity crisis. Are they the MAGA Republican Party, or are they the Bush Republican Party? And you see a lot of media now not just media, organizations in general, trying to pit Trump against DeSantis, and they're trying to push DeSantis to run to try to challenge Trump. Even if he did run, they'd probably attack DeSantis just like they attacked Trump. I'll get into my take on what's happening with this, but first, let me go over what's happening with Trump right now. Daily Mail has this story. Let me show you. It says, Trump confirms he will give a primetime special announcement on Tuesday, that's tomorrow, at Mar-a-Lago, as he appears set to ignore GOP aides asking him to postpone making the 2024 statement. This is important on a few levels. Remember, folks, the Republican Party almost did not let Trump run as their forerunner in 2016. Do you remember that? Do you remember when Trump won the primaries and then they almost didn't let him run under the party, and they only let him run as the front runner of the party because he threatened to run as an independent? Does anyone remember that? They're trying something similar right now. They want Trump to basically sit on the sidelines and wait until, the forever counting until Democrats win is over. Until specifically, not even that, but the Georgia, runoff elections were over. Or sorry, they have to redo the elections in Georgia basically because of the laws, because it's so close. It'd be the runoff elections. Let me show you what Daily Mail is saying, though, because Trump, it looks like, is not having it. He's not playing the game. Now, it says here, Donald Trump announced he will be delivering his promised special announcement this Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time from his Mar-a-Lago residence in Florida. It is expected but not confirmed that the former president will be announcing his intent to run for president again in 2024. Maybe that's his intent, but is actually doing it. It says Trump announced during a rally last Monday that he would be making a statement next week, and I've personally seen his announcement of the event. This is actually true. This is happening, folks. And it says, but whether it would finally happen seemed to be up in the air after his GOP aides, that's Republican Party aides, implored him to put off the announcement until after the Georgia Senate seat runoff. And the Georgia runoff is scheduled for December 6th, a while off, well, a bit off still, and has the potential to decide the fate of the majority in the Senate. Finalized plans for the announcement come as the president began ramping up attacks on Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, I'll get into that in a bit, who decidedly won his re-election big on Tuesday and has been predicted to be a GOP rival to Trump in 2024. Former Trump press secretary Kayleigh McEnany, who now works for Fox News, advised on air that Trump should hold off on an announcement until after the Georgia Senate runoff. And she said, I know there's a temptation to starting talking about 2024. No. McEnany said on Wednesday edition of Outnumbered, 2022 is not over, she said. Every Republican energy needs to go to grinding the Biden agenda to a halt, and that could go straight through the Senate of Georgia. Now, what's happening with this? Let me get into a few parts with this. First of all, why is the GOP trying to get Trump to delay this? I have two thoughts on this personally. One is I believe the GOP wants DeSantis to run, not Trump. The GOP has never liked Trump. They have never liked him. Going back to, again, 2016, where they almost did not let Trump run as the Republican candidate. It was only when Trump threatened to run as an independent that they accepted it. And it was like pretty begrudgingly. I think they see DeSantis and don't get me wrong, I think DeSantis would be a fine president. I think he would actually do a lot to challenge the woke agenda. He's declared that, Florida is where woke goes to die. And personally, I think one of the reasons why you saw you did see the red tsunami in Florida in ways you didn't see it through a lot of the country. The reason, in my opinion, is because they got rid of a lot of the ballot issues. They got rid of a lot of the issues that are being used to, frankly, just do the forever counting until Democrats win. Hey, we found some ballots in these boxes sitting in the back of a van type thing. Those types of things that have happened many times with Democrat candidates, and every time they find new boxes of ballots, somehow it brings in a new wave of votes for Democrats. Or they have a glitch that, shoots their votes up or something like that. That type of thing. Florida closed the loop on those issues, and Florida, which is normally a swing state, should have been a bellwether for the entire nation. Personally, I believe that DeSantis taking a strong stance on strengthening the election laws in Florida created the situation you saw. That being said, though, a lot of people are watching what's happening in Florida and saying DeSantis did something right. The Republican Party failed in a lot of other places. We need to have DeSantis basically become the head of it. I know a lot of people want him. I think that the establishment, the Republican establishment, also views DeSantis in a very positive way. And the reason being, he can rally both MAGA voters, right? He can get the MAGA voters. In fact, I know personally a lot of people who are good Trump supporters who would prefer DeSantis over Trump. They know he could get the MAGA voters, and he could also play politics. I think they see him as kind of a step down from the intensity of Trump. The question would be, could he withstand the same types of attacks Trump has undergone? Could he withstand a fake Trump-Russia scandal? Could he withstand the numerous fake sexual assault charges? Could he withstand ongoing attacks and fake stories from the media? Would he react similarly? Not sure. It's not quite clear. Maybe he could, maybe he couldn't. In terms of public speaking, it tends to not be quite as strong as Trump, but who knows? Regardless of that, the Lincoln Project, the Republican Party, most of the Democrat establishment, Washington Post even, the establishment media, they seem to really favor DeSantis over Trump, which ties into, in my opinion, on why we're watching what's happening now. If it happens that Georgia goes to a Democrat, if it happens that that basically Republicans lose the possibility of a Senate majority, that will essentially solidify the narrative that's being pushed right now, that Florida is the model, that DeSantis did something right and he should essentially be the front runner. The media very likely will immediately get behind DeSantis, and you would have DeSantis very likely become the ideological front runner of the Republican Party, meaning that Trump would have a hard time announcing a 2024 run. The excitement and kind of backing for him would fade a bit, and he would be overshadowed to an extent. I believe Trump's doing it ahead of time because he doesn't want that scenario to happen. My personal opinion. At the same time, as well, it's important on a few different points. One is, folks, look, the forever counting. Hey, we keep finding new ballots, we keep finding new votes, we need to keep counting ballots. The issue where you have, like Maricopa County and other areas, counting ballots that should be done in a single day, taking them over a week, they're going to keep doing it, in my opinion, until they win. And right now you are seeing Republicans looking like they may even lose the House, let alone the Senate. If Republicans lose both the House and the Senate, and they blame it, for example, on messaging or Trump's backed candidates rather than on the mail-in ballots and rather than on the issues with the election system, people will automatically think DeSantis' model is the model to win in 2024, and they're going to get behind that instead. This is kind of where things are at right now, and the establishment narrative being pushed is not voter fraud. The establishment narrative is, again, Trump's failing and Trump backfiring and those things, not Mitch McConnell, kind of sabotaging the Trump nominees and that kind of thing. You have a lot of political infighting right now. Again, I'm not taking a side between Trump and DeSantis. I think DeSantis would be a fine leader. I think he'd actually do a fantastic job. But, I think this is the conflict we see brewing right now. That being said, Trump also wrote a very long thread attacking DeSantis. And I think by doing that, he kind of made it clear that he doesn't care who's running against him. He's going to basically fight them like he would fight anybody else. It was very similar. In my opinion, you wouldn't see that be a lasting state. It would be very similar to, again, 2016, where you had Ted Cruz and you had, Marco Rubio and you had Jeb Bush running against Trump, and Trump just insulted all of them. Remember, he was calling Marco Rubio Little Rubio. He was calling Ted Cruz lying Ted Cruz. And then after, of course, the debates were over, they all became friends again. I see a similar thing happening with Trump and DeSantis if DeSantis does choose to run. They're very likely going to attack each other, but it won't be lasting after that, in my personal opinion. I think it's to be expected, and I do think we're going to see a lot of that. A bit further into what's happening right now. Epoch Times had this story, and they said Trump wants everyone to know that he's, of course, running for president. And this is from one of his advisors. And it says one of former President Donald Trump's advisors said the 45th president will, of course, announce that he is running for president next week, that's this week, despite calls from some Republicans to hold off. And said, quote, President Trump is going to announce on Tuesday that he's running for president, and it's going to be a very professional, very buttoned-up announcement. And that's Jason Miller telling this to Steve Bannon on his show on Friday. And Miller, who heads the social media website Getter, said he spoke with the former president on Friday. Trump told him that, quote, there doesn't need to be any question, end quote, about his plans. And Miller also added, of course, he said, of course, this is him quoting Trump. He said, Trump said, quote, of course I'm running. I'm going to do this, and I want to make sure people know that I'm fired up, and we've got to get the country back on track. Why does this matter? It's because you're going to be watching two different forms of narrative. And look, I'm not taking a Trump-DeSantis side. Choose whichever you like. I mean, honestly, it's like, I don't care personally. I'm just telling you kind of how I'm observing the phenomenon. The DeSantis camp is going to be based on the narrative that Republicans had losses in that the red wave didn't happen, right? That the red tsunami didn't happen because of Trump-backed candidates and because, basically people didn't get behind it and because the messaging was wrong. They're going to be looking at that side of the whole political narrative, that they didn't push the real agendas hard enough. They didn't push maybe the things DeSantis has pushed hard enough. The concerns about what's happening in schools with, the I think the trans agenda and the extreme hypersexualization, which DeSantis has gone very strong against. That they didn't, for example, appeal to the Latino vote hard enough. And given that Florida actually flipped a lot of seats, really got a lot of the Latino vote, that they see DeSantis as someone who can rally the Latinos, right? They see DeSantis as model on more that level. The Trump side is going to be based on a different narrative, which is that Republican establishment has basically sabotaged the party from the inside. Trump is going to push for a purging not just of the Democrat establishment and their agenda, but also the Republican establishment. He's going to be going hard against Mitch McConnell. He's going to be going hard against the Republicans he believes do not back the agenda that he's supporting. What you're watching right now, and he's also going to go very hard against election fraud. His narrative isn't going to be that it was messaging or lack thereof. Trump's agenda, I personally believe, is going to be more that there are fundamental flaws within the system, and the fundamental flaws, voter fraud, people, the rhinos, people who are Republican in name only, the establishment overall, that this is the problem. Trump wants to remake the system, in other words. Trump wants to shift the entire system and fundamentally change it. DeSantis wants to change the agenda of the system, essentially, if that makes sense. One would be more of a political thing. The other one would be more of a restructuring of the American system itself. Trump's message with that is what the establishment, I think, really fears. They're worried he's going to come in, as they've mentioned, and he's just going to fire like 50,000 people. That he's going to just purge the administrative state. That he's going to basically change the way that he's going to change the way that the government has been run and the way that they've done things. That is going to be Trump's agenda, and that's how I think they see these things differing. Now, that being said, yeah, I'm not taking sides. Pick which one you want. I'm just telling you the general phenomena in terms of how I see people viewing them and the camps that are forming on both sides. Folks, let's go deeper into this. First, though, we do have a sponsor today. Today's episode is brought to you by Secure. Now, over 155 million Americans are affected by data leaks in 2020. The average American had their personal data stolen about 4 times over the year. People get anxious because they can't protect their online data or their online activity. But now there's a new email and messenger app called Secure. That's Secure. That can give privacy and security for sending emails and messages. Secure's server and data center are hosted in Switzerland, which is important because Switzerland has the strictest data privacy laws in the world. Secure does not rely on big tech companies like Amazon, Google, or Microsoft, which also means it's not subject to the Intrusive Cloud Act. Secure does not ask for your phone number, mine your data, or upload your contacts as well. Now, folks, it's $5 for the messenger, $7 for the email, or $10 for the email and messenger package. You can visit secure.com today for a free 7-day trial, or you can use the promo code Joshua to get 25% off. And again, big thanks out to Secure for sponsoring today's episode. Folks, further into this. So I want to go more into what's happening with this whole MAGA Republican versus establishment Republican battle we're seeing play out right now. Because I think this is going to be one of the defining battles over the next couple years. And one that Biden as well, I think, is trying to really challenge. Remember that if Trump even becomes the Republican nominee, and if, for example, the Supreme Court rules in favor of Trump, even if it doesn't, or rules in favor that the state legislatures are the essential governing bodies of the elections, Trump is going to push them to undo the 2020 election. That's one of the big concerns I've mentioned Biden has even raised. And this again goes back to my point that what Trump represents is like a wrecking ball. He represents someone who wants to go in and just purge the corruption within the system. He's pushing for something very different than maybe a DeSantis or another just regular Republican would push for, who may want to work with the establishment rather than abolish most of the establishment. And again, that's kind of how the political landscape is being formed right now. That being said, the people who are part of the establishment really don't want that to happen. And I think this is one of the big brewing battles we're going to be watching within the Republican Party very heavily, really very soon, maybe starting tomorrow, in fact. Let me show you some of this. Now, Epoch Times had this story. It said the Republican Party doomed to be extinct if it backtracks. This is Mark Huckabee saying this. I'm making the point that it's not just me saying this, right? Let me show you this. It says the Republican Party must stick to the working class or face the fate of becoming extinct, a former governor warned. He said, let's hope it doesn't go back to the days of globalists, the days of just basically being servants of the multinational corporations, and that we become the party of the country clubs and the swells. Because if we do that, we are destined to become extinct, and we should be. That's former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, a Republican, said this during an interview on Fox Business. And it says the former governor said the Republican Party must care about the American people. Quote, we've got to be the party of the working class, the party that cares about America, the party that believes in that patriotism is okay, that it's fine to want to make sure that Americans and the American dream is alive and well. He said if we focus on that, I think that's a winning message. Huckabee made the comments in response to a question about the anti-Trump narrative after the midterm elections on some media, including some right-leaning news websites. He acknowledged that the Republican Party is facing many challenges, including not having enough voters among the young generation, being censored on social media, and being entangled by the bureaucracy of government. Now, briefly as well, you're going to watch you're going to watch Fox News, New York Post, and Wall Street Journal also turn on Trump. They already have begun. Keep in mind that started really heavily during the whole January 6th debates, where the Wall Street Journal actually came out with an op-ed saying that they were kind of getting off the Trump train, so to speak. And where New York Post also published something where they stated as well that they were going to basically no longer support Trump. That being said, that's of course the kind of the same establishment, conservative-ish media. They are becoming anti-Trump. You're going to watch, in other words, the Republican establishment, even including the media establishment, turn on him, and you're already beginning to watch that. That being said as well, you also have the censorship lifting on social media. There's also a good chance that Trump could have his Twitter account restored. You're going to see a very interesting shift in terms of messaging. You're going to see a very interesting shift where really everybody's going to be attacking Trump, I think. And where the messaging politically, the messaging on news outlets, the messaging from the establishment, the messaging on both the right and the left is going to be playing into this. They're really going to be pushing, those people are going to be pushing for DeSantis to run. It's interesting that the DeSantis has kind of, after being attacked by Trump, and it was, in my opinion, I don't like seeing them the infighting like that, but DeSantis made it clear that he does not seem to have an interest in running. And it's interesting that they're trying to push him so hard to run when he's saying he doesn't plan to. It looks like DeSantis is more planning to kind of sit back, let Trump run, and then maybe run in 2024 or something like that. In other words, it's not DeSantis saying it, it's the establishment saying it mostly. Further into this, folks, let me show you another one. Epoch Times says GOP senator says old Republican Party is dead, calls for major changes. And says, quote, Republicans need to build something new. After failing to retake the Senate majority following the 2022 midterm elections, a GOP senator said. It says Democrats picked up a key Senate seat in Nevada after Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, a Democrat, defeated Republican challenger Adam Laxalt after numerous news outlets called the race in Mastro's favor on Saturday. Days before that, GOP candidate Mehmet Oz conceded to Democrat John Fetterman, while outlets called the race for Arizona's Senate seat in favor of incumbent Senator Mark Kelly, a Democrat again. The quote is, quote, the old party is dead. Time to bury it. Build something new. And that's Senator Josh Hawley saying that. He wrote that on social media. A day before, Hawley said Republican Senate leaders are failing to back initiatives that are supported by their voters. And he said, quote, Washington Republicanism lost big Tuesday night. When your agenda is cave to Big Pharma on insulin, cave to Senator Chuck Schumer on gun control and Green New Deal infrastructure, and tease changes to Social Security and Medicare, you lose. Hawley wrote that over the weekend, and Hawley, Senator Marco Rubio, Senator Rick Scott of Florida, reportedly circulated a letter calling for Republicans to postpone their Senate leadership vote as well. Remember, Mitch McConnell thought he was going to get it. I knew it was a Mitch McConnell. Yeah, so basically it's presumed that Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell would get it. They're trying to block that from happening now. It doesn't look like the kind of new Republican Party wants McConnell leading the House if they get it. And again, as I mentioned, Republicans are, frankly, the way that the forever voting is taking place, the way the forever counting is taking place, frankly, folks, it looks like Democrats are just going to keep counting the votes until they win. They're going to keep finding new ballots. They're going to keep saying that there was a glitch or whatever else. They're going to keep going and going and going until they find enough votes to win. And if things continue on the track they are on, you will probably watch Republicans not just lose the Senate, but also lose the House. Now, that being said, if they do by chance win the House, which they were projected to, and frankly, even up until a few days ago, looked like they were going to, you would watch basically Mitch McConnell make a real run to become the House leader, replacing Nancy Pelosi in that position. There were Republicans out trying to block that from happening. And again, this ties into what I've been discussing. You're going to watch a battle take place within the Republican Party itself. There's a battle for the identity of the party. And this again ties to something that Biden himself has been saying. Remember Biden's red speech, where Biden talked about the difference between the MAGA Republicans and the normal Republicans, as he puts it. You're going to watch that battle take place. Is the Republican Party the Trump Party, or is it the Bush Party? That's the whole thing right here, right? Yeah, CK, you're saying, what cycle in history are we currently repeating? There's a few we're currently repeating. America is repeating, of course, some of the same mistakes the Chinese made ahead of the Communist Party's takeover of China. We're also repeating a lot of, frankly, the same mistakes that Germany made right before the rise of Hitler. If you look, for example, at Antifa, if you look at the Weimar Republic, if you look at the issues of, for example, the Little Red Guard in China and the Communist International, and compare that to Antifa and, of course, globalism, it's very much the same thing. And if you understand where things are heading in terms of the social, kind of the social development goals of the United Nations, where they want to take these things, if you look at the agendas currently in play, and frankly where it's heading, things are probably going to get bad economically. They're going to get bad in terms of food. They're going to get bad in terms of basic living standards. And over the next couple years, how these issues are framed is going to be one of the big, really, I think the deciding factor of the future, not just of the United States, but of the world. The next 2 years, folks, are going to decide the future of this country. And how that plays out is going to be extremely, extremely important. Now, that said, I'll get more into that. Folks, I want to get into what's happening as well with this whole... Now, there's something big just happened. Something big just happened, and frankly, it's a bit hard to track. I've gone and done a lot of research on it. I want to talk about FTX. And stick with me because I know that sounds a bit technical. FTX was one of the big cryptocurrency companies. They were working with Ukraine. They were working with the World Economic Forum. They were also, interestingly, one of the main, at least the head of the company, one of the biggest donors to the Democrat Party, second only to George Soros. And they just got hit with pretty much one of the biggest, probably, corruption scandals we've seen in the financial industry for a long time. And it's going to be big because this is something that people are accusing of representing basically a money laundering scheme. Is that what it is, right? Is it money laundering? We'll see what it is when I think the full thing comes out. But this is essentially what was happening. FTX was being propped up by the World Economic Forum. It was being propped up by Ukraine, as in fact one of the partners on Ukraine's fundraising campaigns. Democrats were pouring money, well, and some Republicans, pouring money into Ukraine. Ukraine was then pouring money into FTX, and FTX, through the head of it, was pouring money right back into the Democrats. Again, the head of the company being the second largest Democrat donor, second only to George Soros. The company just imploded. They're going to be investigated, and things are looking really bad for the Democrats as evidence on this comes out. Let me explain to you. We'll get into that in a bit. First, though, folks, let's jump over to Epic TV exclusively. Before we jump over, my new documentary comes out tomorrow. It's called The Final War. I want to show you a trailer of this, and this has been in the works for a long time. This has been close to, or maybe even a little longer than 2 years in the works now. Let me show you the trailer for this, folks. This premieres tomorrow. That said, let me show you that and we'll jump over.
The greatest threat facing the United States is the CCP.
The Epoch Times investigation team had studied the CCP for years, but what we uncovered was yielding evidence beyond our imagination.
With Chairman Mao, with the Prime Minister, our talks have been characterized by frankness.
The Clinton administration said, oh, don't worry about it. This will be a poison pill for China.
China's strategic goal is to make sure that the U.S. has 4 enemies, and one of them must be a terrorist group.
We are giving of our life's blood so that the Chinese Communist Party can survive and thrive.
Again, folks, that premieres tomorrow. The team that did this is the same team I worked on the original virus documentary with. And you could think of this as kind of part 2 of the virus documentary I did looking into the origin of the Wuhan coronavirus, the CCP virus. I think this one's going to hit very hard, and the timing is probably, unfortunately, very good because the Chinese Communist Party, Xi Jinping, they just did a call to war. This documentary is going to explain what is really happening with that and why it matters and what's really going on behind the scenes. This debuts tomorrow. So again, folks, tune in tomorrow for that. That said, let's jump over to Epic TV. And then I want to talk about FTX, which is possibly like the thread that's going to unravel a huge part of this, what looks like a money laundering campaign. We'll see if that's what it is as evidence comes out, but it's looking really bad right now. That said, let's jump over to Epic TV, then we'll go into it. All right, folks. Those of you curious, by the way, I'm drinking white tea today. It's a peony tea, actually.